hello, we're back. Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing today? How's everyone doing today? Hope everyone's doing fine on this fine day. We have a new story to read, and we have, as I mentioned in the last stream before, I was, trying my best to avoid fainting down there, which I do deeply apologize. If we just move you guys over here. Okay. We're gonna scoot the microphone over here. Hello. Hopefully you can hear me better. So, last stream, I was nearly passing out. I couldn't keep focus. I heard the recording. I didn't even want to upload it to YouTube, but I'm gonna have to because, well, it'd be rude if I didn't. It wouldn't be fair to you. Because I already missed part 8, which I don't know what happened to part 8, but yet here we are. So, that stream went iffy. I was stumbling over words. I couldn't read right. I already can't read right, so me noticing it is a lot more worse than I've hoped for. So, besides that parade, we have a new D&D subclass. I made one, and it's brought to you by, based and helped by Reddit user Haunting Minute 5103. So far, the reviews of the subclass are very positive, which is good. I don't like when anything is positive. Uploaded it to Reddit, Instagram, YouTube, and onto the Discord. Which, if you are new, please by all means, you can drop and join into the Discord. Join the galaxy, my dear good friends. As I try my best to make sure that each of the authors I narrate for have a subclass based for each one of them. So, for now, let's get ready. Sit back. Relax, let us check some things. And tell me, my dear good friends, have you heard this story? Posted on r/creepypasta 1 day ago by Reddit user haunting_minute_5103 or aka I got Nora. I sold hours of my life and someone else is living them. I was out of options. Rent was overdue, the eviction notice was taped to my door like a scarlet letter, and my fridge held nothing but half a bottle of ketchup and a takeout container I was too afraid to open. I stopped answering calls weeks ago. There were only so many ways to say I'll pay you next Friday when Friday had stopped showing up for you. Every night I sat in front of my laptop until my eyes burned, scrolling through job sites that blurred together into one long rejection letter. Experience required, degree preferred, must be willing to smile while dying inside. No one hires someone whose only resume entry is desperate. That's when I saw it. It wasn't even online. I was walking home from the grocery store empty-handed because even ramen felt like a luxury, and I noticed a flyer taped to the bus stop shelter. It was printed out in plain white paper, the kind you'd pull off of a dusty office printer. Black letters, no logo, no company name. Sell your time. Competitive rates, no experience required. I laughed out loud. To no one. A scam, obviously. Some shady gig that ends with your kidneys in the dark web. But the thing stuck in my head the entire walk home like an earworm. Sell your time. The words were too simple, too confident, like whoever wrote them didn't care if you believed it or not. But by the time I reached my apartment, curiosity had been wrestling with hopelessness. What if it wasn't a scam? What if it was just weird? Weird was better than starving. The email was printed in tiny letters at the bottom of the page. I typed it in, hit send, and told myself that it was just a joke. They replied before I even finished making coffee. The message was short. Thank you for your interest in Chronocorp. Orientation available at 9 a.m. No documentation required. Please arrive on time. No address, no signature, no phone number, just a street name. I'd never heard of those last two words, on time. The next morning, I went. I don't even remember deciding to. I just remember standing in front of the building that looked too clean to exist in my part of town. Chronocorp. The name was printed in thin silver letters. Above the glass doors, no slogan, no logo inside. The air smelled like nothing. The sterile, filtered kind of nothing, that only money could afford. Everything gleamed with white, the floors, the walls, even the furniture. The only color came from the clocks. There were so many clocks, dozens of them, lined the walls with each one a little different. Antique brass, digital displays, wristwatches in glass cases, but all ticking in perfect synchronized rhythm. Not a single one out of place. The sound was hypnotic, soft but endless. Tick, 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 tick. The receptionist was sat behind a white counter that looked like it had never known dust. Her hair was neatly pinned back, her uniform spotless, her expression off, like a smile worn thin from too much practice. "Thank you for your interest in Chronocorp," she said, every syllable smooth and balanced. "We value every second." I told her I didn't have a resume. She didn't blink. "We won't need that." She slid a clipboard towards me. The paper was thick and heavy, the kind you'd use for wedding invitations. It wasn't a job application. There was no section for previous employers or emergency contact, just a handful of lines filled with legal jargon that might as well have been written in another language. The only part in bold centered in the middle of the page read, "Time exchanged." There was a line of signature underneath. I hesitated, glanced up to ask a question, but the receptionist wasn't looking at me anymore. Her gaze was fixed at the largest clock on the wall, a massive black and gold thing that ticked with a mechanical precision. For a moment, I thought the sound of it got louder, like the air itself was keeping time. Tick, 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 tick. "Do I need to—" I started, but she cut me off gently. "Just sign, and we'll take care of the rest." Her tone was kind, too kind, like someone confronting a child before vaccination. My stomach twisted, but the words "paychecked" echoed in my head louder than the ticking. I sighed. She smiled, not warmly, but the kind of satisfaction that made my chest tighten. When she reached for a small silver stopwatch on the counter, pressed it once and said softly, "Your time begins now." The ticking in the room seemed to falter for a single beat. Just one. Then everything went perfectly, eerily back to rhythm. The job turned out to be easy. Too easy. A man in a gray suit met me in the lobby the next morning. He didn't smile, didn't introduce himself, just jumped on his heel and motioned me to follow. His shoes made no sound on the tile. Mine did. That was the first thing that felt wrong. It was like the building only chose to echo for me. The hallways stretched longer than they should have. Clean, too clean. White walls, chrome trim, soft white lights that never flickered in clocks everywhere. Wall clocks, desk clocks, floor clocks, all ticking together in perfect synchronized rhythm. The sound should have been comforting, but it wasn't. It reminded me of breathing. 1, 2, 3. And I couldn't tell if it was mine or the building's. We passed door after door, each labeled donation room, followed by a number. I tried to count them, but somewhere between 6 and 9, I lost track. The numbers didn't make sense. We turned corners that didn't seem to exist in the building's floor I'd seen online. Finally, we stopped at donation room 7. The room door opened with a soft click, and he motioned me inside. The room was small, barely big enough for the chair in the center and the machine beside it. The machine looked old. Older than the building itself. Heavy brass panels, faint scratches on its surface, the kind of hum you feel more than hear. Wires coiled out from its sides like veins, ending in silver discs the size of coins. A dial in the front read, "Hours donated, 0.00. "Please sit," the man said. His voice was quiet, smooth, practice. I obeyed, mostly out of habit, out of hunger. The discs against my temples were cold enough to make me flinch. The metal smelled faintly like ozone, like lightning before a storm. "You may feel a brief acceleration. That's normal." Acceleration? I opened my mouth to ask what it meant, but before I could, the hum deepened. It wasn't loud, more like a pressure behind my eyes. My heartbeat started matching it, or maybe it was the other way around, and then it stopped. The man already removed the discs. His movements were calm, deliberate, unbothered. The wall clock said an hour had passed. My phone said the same, but I hadn't felt it, not a second of it. My body felt rested, lighter, like I'd been asleep, but better. My hunger was gone, replaced with this strange clarity, like my brain had been polished. The man handed me a slip of paper, $480. Payment is automatic, he said. You'll receive it instantly. He was right. By the time I checked my phone, the deposit was already there. No delay, no pending transaction, just done. The second session went the same. So did the third. Each visit, I'd sit, feel the hum, blink, time would vanish, no dizziness, no side effect. Just missing hours and a bigger balance in my account. Other employees drifted through the hallways like ghosts in pressed uniforms. They didn't talk much. They didn't look much either. Sometimes I'd pass someone I swore I'd seen before, only their face would seem slightly off. Not in a big way, just subtly rearranged. Like they were the same person but through a fogged mirror. Once I stopped by the vending machine on the way out and saw a woman staring at it, hand hovering over the keypad, motionless. Her reflection in the metal looked sharper than her actual face. What does it do? I asked, nodding towards towards her door. She blinked slowly and smiled without looking up. Don't overthink it. Just enjoy the paychecks. And I did. The money felt unreal at first, too much, too easy, but after a few sessions I stopped questioning it. Bills disappeared, the fridge filled up. I bought a new mattress, decent headphones, even a proper coat, and for the first time in years, I slept through the night without the unusual dread gnawing at me. For a while, it felt like maybe, this was what stability looked like. But little things started bothering me. The clocks, for one, they ticked in perfect unison at work, at home, even on my phone. I'd lie in bed sometimes and hear the silence under, soft, steady, everywhere. In a few seconds, they'd skip. Not randomly, but rhythmatically, like something was cutting out the empty space between ticks. Sometimes my phone would jump from 10:42:06 to 10:42:08, cleanly, like the world just blinked and moved on without me. I told myself it was nothing, just a glitch. But some mornings I'd wake up and my phone's alarm would already be ringing. Even though I hadn't set it, I'd check the call logs and see a number labeled Chrono Corp HQ, listed at times. I don't remember being awake, and every night, just before I drifted off, I'd feel the faint hum behind my temples again. It wasn't loud enough to scare me, just loud enough to remind me that it was still there. Counting, the first thing I lost was a meal. Nothing major, just dinner. I came home one night, dropped my keys on the counter, and saw an empty plate in the sink. Grease streaks, crumbs, a fork balanced across it. Only I hadn't cooked, I hadn't eaten. I stood there staring at the plate longer than I cared to admit, waiting for some memory to click into place. It didn't. The smell of garlic still lingered in the air, faint but fresh. I checked my phone. A text from my friend Mia. That pasta was good. You should cook more often. My thumb hovered over the screen. I hadn't seen her in weeks. I started to type back something like, what pasta? But before I finished, the typing bubble appeared on her end, then froze, then disappeared. The timestamp on her message read yesterday. I stared at the word until the phone went dark. After that, it wasn't just dinner. I'd open the fridge and find groceries I don't remember buying. Fresh fruit, old cold cuts, and bottled wine that definitely hadn't been there the day before. Once I found a grocery receipt in my jacket pocket, signed in my handwriting with the timestamp of 2:13 a.m. Sometimes I'd wake up and my laundry was folded neatly in the basket. Once my sheets were changed, I don't even own spare sheets. For a while, I blamed stress, or maybe the sessions of Chrono Corp were messing with my sleep schedule. Maybe donating hours confused my body's clock. It was the only explanation that didn't make me sound insane. But it wasn't just me. One morning, the clocks in my apartment stopped. Every single one. Digital, analog, wall, phone, for exactly 1 second. Then, without a sound, they all caught up in perfect unison. I stood there holding my breath, listening to the faint tick that seemed to crawl under everything. The fridge hum, the traffic outside, even the heartbeat. Everything was sinking to rhythm. Tick, 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 tick. It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It was constant. Then came the bruises. Small, circular ones on my arms and neck. Not painful, just there. The size of a coin. I tried to remember bumping into something, but the harder I tried, the more memories slipped away, like water between fingers. Some mornings, there'd be new marks, faint scratches along my ribs, little red indentations on my temple where the discs used to sit. At work, no one mentioned them. The man in the gray suit still met me in the lobby, still walked me wordlessly to donation room 7, same chair, same hum, same slip of paper with a new number. Only the machine was different this time. The dial didn't start at 0, it already read 3 when I sat down. I frowned. Why does it say that? The man's expression didn't change, but his eyes seemed distant, like he was reading off a script written behind his head. accounts for carryovers. I said, carryover of what? He smiled. It was the kind of smell people practice in mirrors, all muscle, no meaning. Time isn't lost, it's redistributed. Before I could respond, the hum began. This time I felt it deeper, not in my head, but in my bones. The air thickened, my vision tunneled. When it stopped, I didn't feel lighter. I felt stretched, like part of me hadn't caught up yet. Like I stood up too fast and left something behind. The night I couldn't sleep, the hum seemed to follow me home, whispering in stillness. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw numbers flickering behind my eyelids. 3, 3.00, 3.25, 3.6.00. Like my dreams were clocking in. The next morning, Mia called me. I almost didn't answer. When I finally did, her voice was trembling. Hey, are you okay? I'm fine. Why? You don't remember, do you? Remember what? Silence, long, unsteady. Then, you were at my place last night. You brought me wine and told me you quit your job. Chest went tight. No, I didn't. Her breath hitched. You did. You were different. You looked happy, but your eyes, what about them? They weren't yours. I didn't know what to say. I think I hung up without meaning to. That night I didn't sleep. Couldn't. The hum was louder now, steady, pulsing behind my eyes like a second heartbeat. The clocks in my room ticked out of sync. For the first time, I stared at Chronocorp. Then one by one they corrected themselves, except my wristwatch. It was still ticking a second too fast. When I tried to reset it, the second hand pushed back. Not jammed, not broken, pushing. Like something inside me was fighting to keep going. I stopped going for a week. No calls, no emails, no one from Chronocorp showed up at my door. At first, I thought maybe they'd forgotten about me. Then the discrete deposits kept coming. The direct deposits kept coming. Even Friday, same time, same amount. Even though I hadn't clocked in. That's what broke me. It wasn't guilt, it was curiosity. If they didn't need me to show up, then where the hell was the time coming from? I decided to go back, not to work, but to find out who was signing my life away. Chronocorp's lobby looked different that morning, brighter, somehow polished. The walls gleamed with the false hospital white sheen that's only fluorescent light can make. The air was still sterile, humming softly with the sound of electricity, or making time itself, and the clocks, they were everywhere, but this time, every single one showed the same thing, 12 o'clock. Hundreds of them, ticking in unison, yet somehow perfectly silent. The receptionist smiled when she saw me. Mr. Hale? She said, her voice syrup smooth. I froze. My name is... She tilted her head, still smiling. It will be. She slid a visitor badge across the desk. I looked down. It didn't say visitor. It said donor 27, expired access. Something inside me twisted. I didn't correct her. I just took the badge and walked past before she could stop me. The hallways were quieter than usual, but I could feel movement through the walls. Machines breathing and wires pulsing. The floors vibrated faintly under my shoes like the building had a heartbeat. I passed room after room. Glass walls revealed rows of people slumped in the same reclining chairs I'd used. Discs on their temples, the machines beside them pulsing with faint blue light. Most were motionless. Some twitched. Their eyes fluttered behind closed lids, as if they were dreaming someone else's dream. I reached the end of the corridor. I looked and locked glass door read client access, authorized personnel only. I stuck my badge just to try. The lock clicked open. Inside was colder. The temperature dropped a few degrees instantly, and my breath fogged up the glass. Rows of monitors filled the room. Hundreds of screens showing live feeds of people, all ordinary moments. A man eating dinner, a woman brushing her hair, a child playing with a dog, all of them happy. None of them noticed the cameras. Then one screen caught my eye. The feed showed me. I was in a restaurant I didn't recognize, wearing a suit I didn't own, drinking wine I couldn't afford. Across from me sat a woman, older, elegant, poised in a way money teaches. She was smiling, calm, as if she'd known me forever. A label flashed at the corner of the feed. Client, Adela Hale. Purchase hours, 268. 268, 11 days. That's how much of me she owned. I clicked into the file. Notes appeared. excellent physical compatibility, responsive body control, request recurring sessions, remaining balance 2 years, 11 months, 4 days. My mouth went dry. I didn't sold that much. You're not supposed to be here. The voice came from behind me. A man in a gray suit, same one from the first day. Not only now, his face looked thinner, like someone had scraped the human off of him and left something hollow underneath. She likes your body, he said. Calm as ever. Says it's easy to move in. I turned on him. I didn't agree to this. He shrugged almost kindly. You signed the contract. You didn't specify the limit. That's what happens when you sell time in bulk. He laughed sharp and ugly. I laughed sharp and ugly. Then I want it back. He tilted his head, watching me the way a clock might watch a second hand. You can't take back what's already spent. My hands shook. I grabbed the monitor, yanking it sideways. Where is she? He looked up, eyes flickering towards the clock above the door. Not here, he said. She's in there. The clock read 12 o'clock. It didn't move. Then something cracked inside my skull, like the sound of glass shattering underwater. The air folded inward. I was standing in the restaurant. Same table, same wine. Adela Hill, Adela sat across from me, smiling my own smile. Hello, darling, she said, and it was my voice. I slumped back. Get out of me. She chuckled softly. You gave me this. You didn't want the time. I simply made better use of it. The restaurant froze mid-motion. Waiters paused mid-step. Wine mid-poured. Laughter suspended in the air like a photo. The light flickered, but it wasn't dimming. It was hesitating. When I looked down, my hands weren't sinking. One lagged behind the other, like my body couldn't decide what second it belonged to. She stood, lifting her glass with perfect grace. You shouldn't have come back. You're making a mess of the schedule. The walls bent inward, the air shimmered, bending sound and shape together. I could hear the hum again, the same low vibration from the donation room, only now it filled every inch of me. My bones vibrated within it. Stop. I whispered. She smiled wider. It's already stopped. And she was right. Everything was motionless except her and me. When I realized she wasn't really moving either. She was replaying sounds ahead of me, like I was watching her future through a glass wall I couldn't reach. Time, she whispered, her voice overlapping itself like echoes in a tunnel. Doesn't belong to anyone. It just waits for someone desperate enough to sell it. I blinked and she was gone. So was the restaurant. I was back in donation room 7. Empty chair, cold air, the hum fading into silence. Only the clock on the wall remained, still ticking 1 second too fast. I reached for it, desperate to stop the sound, to prove I still existed. My hand passed straight through it. The hum cut out. Everything stopped. For a heartbeat, I thought this was peace. Then I realized it wasn't silence. It was the sound of something waiting to start again. I woke up to the hum again, familiar but distant. Not to my own heartbeat this time. It was someone else's, pulsing inside me in a rhythm I hadn't claimed. In the chair beneath me was cold. Donation room 7, same wall, same seating, same hum, trembling faintly through the air like I held my breath, like the room itself was waiting for me to remember. A slip of paper lay on the counter. My handwriting, only the number was different. 1,200. I didn't remember doing this. The receptionist smiled when I stumbled out. Perfect practice, empty like her face has drawn into glass. Thank you for your service, she said. I don't... My voice cracked. The words felt foreign, like I was trying to speak through static, like someone else was burrowing my mouth to answer for me. Her eyes flicked toward the clock above the door. It wasn't ticking, or maybe it was, but the sound weren't mine anymore. Your time begins now, she whispered. I turned towards the mirror. It wasn't me, not entirely. The face staring back belonged to someone else, wearing my eyes like borrowed glass, my hair, my skin, my hands, but hollow, a mask I'd worn for someone else's comfort. Its smile twitched half a beat too late. The hum grew louder, not just the machine, the walls, the air, the space between my ribs, every breath vibrating like it was running on borrowed seconds. Every heartbeat felt least out of sync with my chest. I tried to speak. My mouth moved. The words weren't mine. I tried to move. My body responded halfway through, awkwardly, uncertainly, a marionette with tangled strings, limbs jerking all the time. And then the screen in front of me flickered. Another me appeared, sitting in the office I didn't recognize, smiling at a client I didn't know. Hours I'd never lived. Memories I'd never have. and I'd never make. Playing back in real life, in real time, like a recording, except the recording was my body. In one feed, I was laughing, in another, I was crying, and one, I was holding a child, and another, a knife. All of it was me, but none of it was me. I realized with a sick clarity. I wasn't gone, not yet, but I was someone else's property now. The receptionist reached for the stopwatch, pressed it once. Your hours have been sold, she said softly. Enjoy the rest of your life, if you can call it that. The world wavered. The hum began a single stretched note that filled everything. Every second I counted as mine slipped through my fingers like sand, leaving only the rhythm of someone still ticking away somewhere far away. I tried to scream, the sound that never came out was mine, and yet not. I tried to remember who I was. Nothing, just a lingering echo of borrowed time, then nothing. No pain, no sound, just a faint, eternal ticking, waiting for the next desperate soul. I thought maybe this is what eternity feels like. And then I was gone. That is a fun twist of horror. That is a fun twist of that. Sorry, man. I got thirsty. Alright. We have... Let us read from our newest author, which hopefully I can now do justice for. We have Reddit user joining throwing their hats into the ring. Reddit user, Unalloyed Saint Trina. Which, that is a fun name. I must ask them where they got that name from. Very well. One of their stories did catch my attention. Let me quickly. And as a reminder, as I promised, whenever I read one of their stories, I post their personal subreddit. Okay. Something I do like about their stories have spacers. Like for you to catch your breath, for me to be able to drink water in the middle of the story. Which I do like. I would admit. I like it. Posted on r/no sleep 17 days ago. Tell me. Have you heard this story? The seagulls are bringing my mother back to me. Piece by piece by piece. The first morning, it was a dull gray tooth speckled with sand and smelling strongly of brine, deposited on my bedroom windowsill like a gift. I don't understand how it was on the inside of my home, given that the windows had been closed and locked all night. I tried not to think about it. The next morning, it was a damp white clot, the same size of a golf ball, with a cloudy pupil and an iris of the color of moss, a lush, familiar green-brown. I woke up earlier that morning before sunrise. I could still hear them, the flock cawing on my front lawn, tapping along the shingles, skittering somewhere inside my house. Though it was hard to say where exactly. Sounded like they were in the walls, but the space was only a few inches thick. They couldn't fit. Laying in bed, desperately pretending to be asleep, I theorized they must be in the vents. It's the only hollow space that they could fit in. Some quiet part of myself knew the theory was wrong, though. They were inside the walls, even if they couldn't fit in there. The third night, it was a finger, swollen with sea rot and inflexibly straight. It was pointing, the digital severed middle accusation, a section. They left it for me to find in the windowsill. Same with the eye, same with the tooth. At that point, I couldn't deny the truth no longer. There was a wedding ring tightly fixed on the finger, and I recognized the jewelry. They were bringing her back to me. I threw those profane totems in the trash, slamming the steel lid shut, like they were liable to jump out on me. Within the hour, I had my real estate agent on the phone. He kept asking me questions, but I couldn't make out what he was saying. High-pitched static plagued our connection. By the end of it, at least, he claimed he could hear me just fine. Out of the blue, inexplicably, I had an idea. Could you hold on for a second? I set the phone down, paced across the kitchen, opened the trash can, and submerged the waterlogged flesh under a thick layer of unused coffee grounds, a makeshift burial for a few fractions of a long-lost mother. When I got back on the line, the connection was crystal clear. Yep, I can hear you now. Bad coverage, I guess. I walked into the backyard, closing the screen door behind me. The ghouls hadn't delivered an ear yet, but I don't think a preclusion of the flesh from hearing me. Tim, I need you to get me the fuck out of this house. Wild fear thrummed at the base of my skull. My mind raced, imagining all the possibilities. The sun was setting. I wondered what the flock was going to bring me tonight. Before the week was up, I'd moved to the opposite end of the city. Not sure why I believed that'd make a damn bit of a difference, but I couldn't do nothing. Without skipping a beat, they started from the beginning. The first night it was a tooth, the next an eye, and then a pointing finger with the wedding ring. There was only one difference. Each piece was slightly dusted with unused coffee grounds. So I moved again. Didn't even bother unpacking. Clearly, I haven't traveled far enough. I needed to migrate further from the sea, further inland. That's where I'd be safe. When I arrived at my next home, 2 states over, I felt a glimmer of hope in my chest. Nothing changed, though. The first night, it was the tooth. That's worse. What's worse, the flock seemed to be getting angrier with my futile relocations. I don't think I slept the first night, and yet even I examined myself in the bedroom mirror the following morning. I found my skin newly covered in cuts and bruises. Nips and pecks on my forearms, across my chest, down my back, everywhere, and I didn't feel any pain until I laid my eyes on the wounds. Standing in my front of my reflection, my mouth gaping, color draining from my face, agony rushed across my body like a tidal wave. The sensation of hundred beaks pulling and prodding on my skin until it burst. The second I attempted to catch them in the act. When I heard them cawing on my front lawn, I leapt out of bed and sprinted to the window, pulling up the blinds with such a force that the drawstring broke. I didn't see a single ghoul outside, but I heard a heavy peal of gentle wing beats overhead. They moved before I could get a look. Matted and by exhaustion, I bolted out the bedroom to the windows on the opposite side of the house. I was dead set on at least seeing them. As I tumbled through the hallway, panting, tripping over myself, there was a soft, muffled clicking of talons meeting wood beside me. They were in the walls. With a grin and uncontrolled fit of laughter, I ran downstairs and pulled a hammer from a half-empty moving box. I stood there, steady, still breathing and perking my ears. Another few minutes clicked, emanated from somewhere behind me. I swung around and set the hammer's claws crushing into the plaster. When I wrenched it out, I saw a glimpse of something in a small, splintered hole. Puppily white feathered meat, squishing through the crawlspace at an unnatural speed. Something about the sight extinguished my fear, my frenzy. I released my grip, but the hammer clattered onto the floor. I collapsed shortly thereafter. Cautiously, tears welling under my bloodshot eyes, I plodded towards the hole. Once I was close enough, I placed 2 trembling lips in the orifice. Hey, Mom, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I muttered, pleading, groveling. No more deal, no more deal. I repeated that phrase over and over and over and over and over again until sleep finally took me. Some time later, bright light gleamed against my closed eyes, body cradling tightly in the fetal position, head resting on the floor. My eyelids creaked open, my vision focused. A single cloudy pupil stared back at me. You know what's the worst part? I don't even remember what we argued about all those years ago. I mean, I was 8, for Christ's sake. We were at the beach, just her and me. I don't remember the car ride. I don't recall walking along the boardwalk or setting up an umbrella in the sand. I just remember anger, vicious, seething, white-hot anger. I sat on her towel, stewing, rage marinating in its own venomous juices. She was just ignoring me, reading a book, sipping dark liquor from a silver flask. Or maybe she was trying to start a conversation. Maybe I was the one ignoring her. Maybe the flask is a detail I added after the fact, something to make me feel better about my part of her disappearance. It's all so hazy. At some point, she stood, went to the bathroom, I think. While she was gone, something began creeping towards me from across from the beach. Superficially, it looked like a ghoul, beady eyes, gray wings, and downturned beak. From there was something fundamentally wrong with it. I could see chaotic clusters of tangled blood vessels throbbing beneath its chest. Its breathing was hoarse, labored, and deep. It walked on a pair of six-toed feet, which of most were talons, but some were more akin to elongated human-like toes. No one seemed bothered by its presence. Kids ran by it without blinking. Adults talked and laughed and threw frisbees around it, completely indifferent to this creature. Eventually, it was right in front of our umbrella, unblinking, eyes locked onto mine. I sort of just knew this thing was offering me something, a deal, and I was still so angry. I wanted Mom gone, vanished, extinct. I wished her dead. The ghoul's beak rasped down. A wet pink tongue unfurled from inside of its mouth, unraveling like a fire hose. I'd been coiled to taunt a spiral. The glistening of bridge rolled towards me until it landed at my feet. It wanted something returned, a desired tribute, something to seal the deal. I didn't have much of myself to give, but before long, I had an idea. I reached into my mouth and pinched one of my upper canines. It was a baby tooth, a part of myself that was there, that was due to fall from me some day now. I twisted and yanked out the canine tooth until it was there, until its thready connections broke. Without hesitation, I laid the chunk of bloodstained enamel into the tongue, like the clicking of a whip. The salivated tendril and its predecessor as prize proceed, flying back to hungry blackness of its maw. The sound of its chewing on my tooth, grinded into a flying dust, was unbearable. Suddenly, movement in my peripheral vision pulled my attention away from the goal. It was my mom. She was walking towards the ocean, arms fully extended at her shoulders, her body across. She steps were languid but deliberate, like the goal. Nobody seemed bothered by her odd spectacle. Even when her legs carried her into the ocean, even when she had disappeared below the tide, no one cared. I cared. I think I cared. Or maybe I smiled. Like I said, my memories were all hazy. This was all so long ago. Fearing the damage that might be done if I didn't stay put, I hadn't moved a fourth time. Over the last few months, I'd returned most of her to me. They'd returned most of her to me. Unsure what else to do, I decided to give Mom a true burial. Her piecemeal body looms below the dirt in my backyard. As I type this, I can hear her through my closed bedroom window. She isn't speaking per se. The sound is higher, shrill, guttural, dripping with spite and confusion, a call of sorts. Mom wants me to know that she feels like she would wants me to feel. Yeah, Mom wants me to know what she feels like I did that day. She's so angry, and once she's finally complete, I think she'll find me. She'll rise from the earth, trudging through the house in the dead of night. From the false safety of my bed, I hear her lumber up the stairs, down the hall, and into my room, with the question burning on the tip of her festering tongue. Mom will want to know why I did that to her. I agreed to its deal. I think she'll be curious about why I was so angry as well. And when she realizes that I didn't have anything to tell her, when she was truly understand that I don't have an explanation to give, I think she'll be really, I think I'll be into really big trouble. That is interesting. That is such a unique way to do that. I don't. Seagulls and a buried mother. Huh. Such a strange thing. Let me be right back. I'm gonna quickly use the bathroom. I'll be right back. You ready? Hello. I'm back. Oh, I almost broke my headset. Okay. So far, I will say that this new author I do very much enjoy. Just that one story of me able to properly read, it seems interesting. I've never thought about the sequels in a horse or a sequel demon? Question mark. Hmm. It is interesting. Hmm. I suppose we'll go on to the next one. This one just caught my attention. I was scrolling through. Tell me, have you heard this story? Posted on our session of sleep 28 days ago. For nearly a decade, the doctor has been keeping my tumors. It was every patient's worst nightmare, but like only for a week. When I inspected my tumor, the first of hundreds, I couldn't quite comprehend what I was looking at, rotating my forearm around in the shower with a passing curiosity. I wasn't scared, just perplexed. The growth had qualities I understood, qualities borrowed from things I was familiar with, but I hadn't ever seen them combined and configured in such a peculiar way. It was dome shaped, like a mosquito bite, but much larger, the size of an Oreo rather than an M&M. It was the color of a day-old blues, a wild berry sort of reddish blue, but the tone was brighter, more visceral, a furious violet hue that looked disturbingly alive. And perhaps most recognizable, there was something jutting off the top, a glinting white pebble, planted at the apex like a flag. It was a tooth. I stepped out and towed myself off, drying the growth last, dabbing the underside of my wrist with unexceptional care. Concerned my new geography might pop if I pushed too hard, I molded my thumb and first finger into deliberate pincers in an attempt to yank the tooth free. But the stubborn little thing refused to budge. Frustrated, I grinned into the mirror, hooking the corner of my mouth with a finger and pulling, revealing gums unevenly lined with a mixture of baby and adult teeth. For the life of me, I couldn't identify the missing tooth. The one that had fallen from my mouth while I slept with such an incredible violency that it became thoroughly lodged in my flesh and it landed. At 9 years old, it was the only explanation that made sense. That's it, I figured. It fell from my mouth and now it's stuck. The tooth was Excalibur. My body was the stone. The notion that it may have grown from the surrounding skin didn't even cross my mind. It was too outlandish. I was losing my baby teeth, and there was a tooth embedded in my arm. Simplicity dictated it came from my mouth. I showed it to my mom over breakfast that morning. Her expression was unfortunately anything but simple, a weak smile with shaky lips and glassy eyes. Pupils dilating, spread like an oil spill. Same expression she wore morning after Grandma died. The second before she told me. Guess it might not be that simple, I thought. The following few days felt like falling without ever hitting the ground, an anxious tumble from one place to the next. My parents ushered me around from terrible urgency, but they refused to explain their concerns over outright. It was also rapid and overwhelming, so to avoid my own simmering panic, I disassociated my psyche, barricaded behind a protective dormancy. As a result, my memories of that time were a bit fragmented. I remember the mint green walls of the pediatrician's office, how close the color was to toothpaste, which made me wonder if I should brush the tooth sprouting from my wrist, actually. Hmm. Maybe. Would it be better to do it before or after my regular teeth? Because those outside my mouth. but I didn't need to brush it more than twice a day or less. I wondered, but never had the nerve to ask. I remember the way my mom would whisper the word oncologist whenever she said it, the same way she'd whisper about possibly taking our Doberman for a walk. The same way Emma Watson would whisper the name Voldemort in the movies, like something bad would happen if the oncologist heard her talking about them. And I'm sure as shit remember the visible relief that washed over her face when the oncologist called for a biopsy report. She practically collapsed on the kitchen floor, a marionette whose strings were simultaneously cut top to bottom. In comparison, Dad stayed rigid, his sun-bleached arms crossed, his wrinkled wrinkled brow furrowed. Excuse me. Even after Mom put a hand up to the receiver, swung her head over, and the relaying the magic word. Bennigan? I've never heard of this word, but I liked it. Same here, man. Same here. Sorry. I liked how it sounded, rolling it around in my head like a butterscotch candy, savoring new bits of flavor with every repetition. Even more than its Saracen linguistics, though, I liked the effect it had on my mom. In the wake of my growth, she'd look so uncomfortable, twisting into knots, every muscle tightly tangled within some length of invisible barbed wire. The word Finnegan was incapacitating, better than abracadabra or utterance once uttered. She was cured, completely untangled, freed from her painful restraints. My dad had his own incantation, though. A two-word phrase seemed to re-inject the discomfort into Mom. Drip by poisonous drip. I could almost see the barbed wire slithering across the floor, sharp metal clinking against tile, coiling up her frame before I could figure out how to stop it. Second opinion, he chanted. I don't remember him actually chanting, to be clear, but it was so goddamn instant, he might as well have. I don't care what the quack says. This is our son that we're talking about. He said there's a 97% chance it won't come back after it's removed. How the hell can you tell? How can you be 97% sure of anything? It's ever going to come back, or won't. There's only 0% and 100%. We need a second opinion. I cowered, sinking into the kitchen chair, compressing myself into the smallest size I could manage, minimizing the space I took up in an overstuffed mobile home. We can barely afford the medical express as it is, my mom declared. Please just spit it out, John. What exactly did you have in mind? Dad smirked. Glad you asked. A little break up real quick to take some water. Oh, it's definitely going to come back after it's accessed 100%. No doubt in my mind, Hawthorne remarked. I struggled to keep my wrist held out as the sweaty man in three-piece suit and bolo tie examined it. As soon as he pushed back the rolling stool's wheels screeching under his weight, I retracted the extremity like a switchblade. Everything about Dad's second opinion felt off. The doctor, Hawthorne, wanted to be addressed by his first name. The office was just a room inside Hawthorne's mansion. No posters of the human body in a cross-section, no itchy gowns, oversized examining tables, nothing familiar. I was sitting in a rickety wooden chair wearing my street clothes, surrounded by walls covered in veritable cornucopia of witchy knickknacks, butterflies pinned inside blocks of clear amber, brightly colored plants hanging in oddly shaped pots, shimmering crystals and runic symbols painted over tarot cards stapled into the plastic, and so on and so forth. Worst of all, Hawthorne insisted on wearing those dusty sterile medical gloves. Initially, I was relieved to see them because it was something I recognized from other doctors. A touch of familiarity and a little physical separation between me and this strange man. But why the hell would he even bother to wear the gloves with those long, sharp, janicide, ringworm-infested fingernails? By the time he was done with his poking and prodding, most of them were punctured through the material. The feeling of his nails scraping against my skin made me gag. The other physician your family saw wasn't completely off the mark. He went on to say, peeling the extracts in his gloves off of his sweat-caked hands before shoving them into his suit pocket. Certainly a teratoma, a germ cell tumor that can grow into all sorts of things: teeth, hair, fat, bone. I'll stop the list there. Don't have any names induced by my account. He shook his head. Oh, no. No, I skipped ahead. My apologies. Hawthorne winked at me. I genuinely believed he was trying to be personable, maybe playful, but the expression had the opposite effect. I squirmed in my seat as if Hawthorne's attention had a physical layer of grease of ash coating my skin. Grease of ash coating my skin, and I needed to shake the residue off. His eyes were just so beady, like two tiny black dots that mirrored the otherwise homunculus surface of his flat, pallid face, seemingly miles away from one another. Doesn't that mean it's malignant? My mother asked, adopting a familiar hushed tone from the last words. He shook his head. Blotting beads of sweat off his specious forehead with a yolk-colored handkerchief. No, ma'am. I would say it's recurrent, not malignant. Recurrent means just that, except it would recur. Malignant, in other hand, means it would reoccur, and Hawthorne abruptly clamped his lips shut. He was speaking a little too candidly. Still, I knew the word he meant. I wasn't a baby. Kill. Excuse the awkwardness, the awkward transparency, folks. I haven't treated a child in some time. Used to, sure, but pediatrics has been a little too painful since, well, that's neither here nor there. Allow me to skip ahead of the bottom line. Despite what the other doctor said, the teratoma will reemerge after a time, and it should be removed. Not because it is malignant, but because I imagine letting it grow too large would be distressing for your boy's sake. I'm glad your husband got my card and gave me a call. I've been informed that money is tight. Don't fixate too much on the financing. I didn't get into medical to bankrupt anyone. We'll do an income-based payment plan. Save any questions you have for my lovely assistant, Daphne. God knows I couldn't answer them. We followed Hawthorne through the vacant mansion and out of the rear patio. There was an older woman facing away from us at a small circular cast iron table, absent-mindedly stirring a cup of black tea with a miniature spoon in its prime. I imagine her backyard was truly a sight to behold. Its current state, however, was one of utter despair. Flower beds that had been reduced to fetal piles of dead stems and fungus, a cherubic sculpture missing an arm, faceless from erosion, above a waterless fountain, its basin dampened with a ray of pennies, cryptic consolation composed of long abandoned wishes, a small bicycle being slowly submerged by overgrown, dilapidated treehouse in the distance. The doctor waved us forward. Mom and I sat opposite the woman. At first, she seemed angry that we had climbed into the two empty seats without asking. Face contorted into a scowl. Something changed when she saw me, however. Her anger melted away into another emotion. It was like joy, but hungrier. She wore a smile that revealed a mouthful of lipstick-stained teeth. As if to... What is that word? Juxcatelps, her husband? Yeah, it's about that. The woman's eyes appeared too big for her face. Critious sockets filled with balls of dry white jelly that left little space for anything else. And those eyes never left me, not for a moment. Not even when she was specifically addressing my mom. Daphne, could you explain the payment plans to these kind folks? Hawthorne remarked as he turned to walk back inside, snapping the screen door shut. Throughout the transparent glass, my eyes lingered on his eyes lingered on me as well, but his expression was different than his wife's, wiseful but muted. In a choice that would only feel logical to a kid, I pretended to sleep, closed my eyes, curled up, and became still. Released a few over insecure snores to really sell it. Hoped that they'd make them finally stop watching me. Eventually, I felt my mom pick me up and carry me to the car. That was her second opinion? She hissed at Dad as we arrived home. Feeling the electricity of an argument brewing in the air, I jogged to the back of our mobile home, entering my room and shut the door. I crawled under the covers and began flickering with the aberrant tooth. I hated it. I hated it. I wanted to leave me alone. Later that week, we returned to the first doctor, the normal one, the oncologist. Or the oncologist. Under sedation, under sedation's Reamer embrace, my tumor was removed. 3 days later, I woke up to discover another equally sized lump that had taken its place. In the end, Hawthorne was right. That one didn't have a tooth. Overall, it was smoother, more circumference. There was some short hairs on the outer edge, though fine, wispy, and chestnut colored. If I had to guess, I'd say they were eyelashes, but I really tried not to think about it. Let me quickly just drink some water. Okay. All things considered, the last 10 years have been relatively uneventful. I quickly adopted to the new normal life. After a year, my recurrent teratoma barely even phased me anymore. The human brain truly is a bizarre machine. Sometimes it will take a few weeks, other times it would take only a few days. Inevitably, though, the growth would be back. My mom would call Daphne's cell and schedule an appointment for it to be excised. She'd always answer on the first ring. I imagined her sitting on the patio, swirling her tipped tea as she stared at the ruins of that backyard. Phone in her other hand, gripped so tight that her knuckles were turning white, just waiting for us to call. Despite being cut into over and over again, my wrist never developed a scar. Hawthorne attributed the miraculous healing to the powder he used in anesthesia in the area before putting scalpel to skin. A bright orange dust that smelled like coriander, distinctly floral with a hint of citrus. I didn't like to watch, so I looked up and surveyed the aforementioned knickknacks that covered the walls, keeping my eyes busy. Say what you want about Hawthorne, but the man was effective. In 5 minutes, the tumor would be gone, the wound cleaned and bandaged, and I wouldn't have felt a thing. Afterwards, he delicately dropped the orphan grown into a specimen jar, handed off to waiting Daphne, and she'd whisk it away. I always wanted to ask how they disposed of them, never did. After each operation, he'd deliver a warning, same with one every line. If it ever changes color from purple to black, you need to come in. Don't call ahead, just get in your car and come over. Day or night, no pit stops, no hesitation. Fair enough. My teenage years flew by. Shortly after my diagnosis, Dad got a promotion. We moved from the trailer park to a much more comfortable single-story house across town. Before long, he received another promotion, and a third, and a fourth. Our financial worriness disappeared. Other than the recurrent tumor, my only other health concern was some mild blurry vision. Started my freshman year in high school. I'd have the strain in my eyes at the board if I sat the last few rows. It wasn't that my vision was out of focus per se, rather the world looked foggy because of a faint image layered over my vision. Multiple eye exams didn't get to the bottom of the issue. Everything appeared to be working in order. Oh god, it's gonna be painful to read. The ophthalmologist, hopefully I pronounced that right. The ophthalmologist suggested it might be due to floaters, visual specks that could develop as you age because of loose clumps of collagen, which seemed to describe what I was experiencing. Lines and cracks of cobwebs superimposed over what was in front of me, unchanging and motionless. Once again, I adapted. Sat in the front of the class as opposed to the back, no big deal. I'm 19 now. I'm attending a nearby community college and living at home. I wanted to apply to Columbia, but Dad insisted otherwise. It's too far away from Hawthorne. I wasn't thrilled. I didn't exactly see myself getting laid on my childhood mattress. That said, he was fronting the cost of my bachelor's degree in full. No loans required, no expectation of being paid back. I hardly had room for bellyache. Honestly, things had been going well, remarkably, transcendingly well. Quiet wellness is a goddamn curse. However, a harbinger pottering changes to come. Lose you into a false sense of security, only to rip the rug right under from your feet with a sadistic glee. Yesterday, around midnight, I woke up to use the bathroom. I flicked on the light. Unsurprisingly, there was a tumor on the other side of my wrist. I was overdue. No tooth, no eyelashes, but it was black as death. Black as Mom's pupils the first time she saw it. I panicked. Didn't even bother to wake up my parents. I had my driver's license after all. I bolted out the door, jumped into the car, and sped over to Hawthorne's mansion, following his instructions to a T. Within seconds of the front door opening, I knew I'd made a mistake. Hawthorne wrapped a meaty paw around my shoulder and pulled me inside. Even in the low light of the foyer, I could tell that there was panic in his features too. Then he said the words that had been relentlessly spinning around in my skull since another incantation. I felt the impenetrable barbed wire curling up my legs as we ascended into the staircase, the air getting colder and colder and colder, cold enough that I could see the heat of his breath as he spoke once we reached the top. I've been meaning to show you my son's old room. I flailed and thrashed, tried to squeeze out of his grasp, but I simply didn't have the strength. Out of the darkness, two familiar craters of white jelly materialized. Daphne unclenched her palm in front of my face and blew. Particles of sweet-smelling dust found their way into my lungs. The abyss closed in. My vision dimmed to match the black of my tumor, and I was gone. That was spacer. Let me just get some more water. Okay. Murmurs pressed through the heavy sedation. At first, their words were incomprehensible. 3 syllables, waterlogged, degrading, and coagulating together until all meaning was lost. Mid-sentence, the speech sharpened. Not my intent, Hawthorne. You're a kind, patient spirit. You wanted the boy to be safe. You wanted to minimize discomfort. It was moral, noble, even. Other sounds became appreciable. The clicking of glass, urgent footfalls against hollow wooden floors, the soft snaps of some sort of keyboard in use. I'd thank you not to condescend, Daphne. Darkness retreated, my vision focused. An icy draft swept up my body, excluding my boxes. I was naked. Oh. I'm not condescending. I'm just pointing out that we knew this was a risk ahead of time, and you still put this boy's well-being above David's. If we pulled the meat slowly, there was a chance it would sour. You knew that. Now look where we are. I was in a bedroom, tied to a chair, with what looked like a makeshift restraint, Ethernet cables drawn chaotically around my torso, rough twine around my ankles and wrist, a single haze light bulb illuminating my surroundings. My eyes swam over peeling posters of old bands, Little League trophies, and framed photos. Daphne and Hawthorne were in some sort of photos, along with the young boy that I didn't recognize. Nana? Okay. A las 3. Dice. My apologies. My apologies, everyone. Okay. Draw chaotically around my torso, rough twine around my ankles and wrist. A single hazy light bulb illuminated my surroundings. My eyes swarmed over peeling posters of old bands, Little League trophies, and framed photos. Daphne and Hawthorne were some of the photos, along with the young little boy that I didn't realize. He looked eerily like myself. just aged back a decade. Not identical, but the resemblance was uncanny. At a nearby desk, my captors were hard at work. Daphne was busy grinding seeds from a mortar and pestle. Hawthorne was scribbling on a notepad, muttering to himself intermittently, tapping his dirt-caked nails against the keys of a calculator. There was an empty beaker at the center of the desk, flanked on all sides by an orthopedical assortment of ingredients. Petals in slim vials, pickled meats, jars of living insects, steaming liquids in teacups. Across the room there was a bed bulging with the silhouette of concealed under a heavy navy blue comforter. The body wasn't moving, not in a way that was recognizably human, at least. The surface bubbled in something akin to carbonation. Freezer-like machines quietly growling below the bed frame. As a scream began to take form in my throat, my gaze landed on the ceiling, specifically the portion above the bed. To my horror, I knew the pattern. I'd been seeing it for years, lines and cracks like cobwebs. I discharged an unearthly howl. They barely seemed to register the noise. Daphne, do you mind going into the garden? We need to mix more powder for him. She reached up and slapped the back of his head. There's no time, she bellowed. He paused for a moment, then returned to his notepad. I wailed. God, I wailed. But I knew as well as they did that there was no one within earshot of the mansion near me, or to even hear me. When it felt like my vocal cords were beginning to tear, I calmed maybe a minute later. Hawthorne threw his pencil down like an A student done with a pop quiz. Half is done with a pop quiz. 6.5. 6.5 should provide enough expansion to harvest the remaining 20 grams we need for David's renewal before it sours completely. Probably won't be lethal either, he proclaimed. Without saying a word, Daphne filled the empty beaker with saline. Hawthorne twisted the lid off the jar, and what looked like translucent crimson-colored marbles with tiny silver crosses fixed at their cone. He picked up a nearby handful held turning rod and flicked it. Two notes resonated in the vibrating meat. The sound was painfully dissonant. He stroked one marble against the turning rod, eventually the meat stilled. The marble vibrated in its stead. When he dropped it into the saline, it twirled against the parameter of the glass monotonously. 6.5 marbles left. Their profane alchemy was evidently ready for use. For whatever it's worth, a high-pitched shriek exploded from the 7th marble when they served it from the butcher's knife. I wish I had just closed my eyes. Daphne pulled the navy blue comforter off the silhouette as Hawthorne approached me, beaker in hand. There was a giant wooden mold underneath the blanket, something you'd use when trying to make a human-sized, human-shaped cookie. It looked almost full, just needed a little more at the very top. A cauldron of teeth and bone and fat and hair, chilled and flesh because of the freezer-like appliances below the bed frame. And it all come from me. Hawthorne set the beaker at the floor beside me, put a fingernail under my chin, and manually pivoted my neck so I wouldn't meet his gaze. Please know that I'm sorry, he whispered. The doctor nudged the glass directly under me. Before long, I bloomed. Tumor began cropping all over my body, my belly, the back of my neck, and the top of my foot, between my shoulder blades, and so on. My skin stretched until it split. I tasted copper. Daphne pruned me with a pair of gardening shears. Hawthorne just used a scalpel. My surrounded flesh plopped against the inside of a nearby bucket. When they collected their fill, Hawthorne pulled the beaker out from under me. My body cooled. Daphne poured the contents of the bucket into the mold. Daphne was complete. They even had a little of me left over. I think everything began to spin. I heard Daphne ask, "Do you think David will understand? Do you think he'll like his new body?" From somewhere in the room, Hawthorne had produced a chunk of dark red meat, glistening with frost. A heart, maybe. He pushed it into the mold. Of course he will. Of course he will. Hawthorne replied, lighting a match. He's our son. The doctor tossed the match into the archived flesh. The molding instantly erupted with a silver flame. A guttering, inhuman moan emanated from the miraculous conflagration. A figure rose from the fire. Thankfully, before I could truly understand what I was looking at, I once again succumb to the merciful darkness. Another milk sip. Back to it. I woke up in the same spot. Some time later, united wounds hastily sutured. There was an IV in my arm above me. The last drops of a blood transfusion moved through the tubing. One of three, it would it seem, judging by the number of empty bags hanging from the steel IV pole. I found my clothes folded neatly beneath the chair, my cell phone lying on top, fully charged. As if tased, I sprang from the chair, crying, pacing, scratching myself, and numbing wordless. Aftershock from the night before, no doubt. When I'd settled enough to think, I threw on my clothes, flipped over my phone, and almost made a call. I was one tap away from calling my dad when something began clicking in my head. I realized a realization too grotesque to be true. I studied the bedroom. The alchemical supplies were gone. The posters, the trophies, the photos, they were all gone too. For some reason, maybe in their haste, they'd left the wooden mold. It was empty, save for a light dusting of silver ash. I sped home, hoping, wishing, praying to God that I wouldn't find something when I searched. Both my parents were at work when I arrived. I sprinted through our foyer, up the stairs, down the hall, and entered my bedroom. I knocked against my bed frame. It was hollow, sure, but that didn't prove anything. I ran my fingertips across the oak. Nothing. Smooth, furnished, featureless. There's no way. I told myself, there's just no way. Dad worked hard and got promoted. That's all. That's it. My bed was pressed against the wall. I still had to examine the last side. The frame screeched as I pulled it, as a searching for me not to check. I felt one of the structures under my stomach pop in the exertion, or one of the sutures over my stomach pop in the exertion, but it didn't slow my pace. If anything, the pain was welcome. Halfway across the normally concealed side, I noticed a slit on the wood. I pushed it open. A hidden compartment clicked open. When I pointed my phone light in the hole, there was a small glass of saline with a single red marble in it, right under where I laid my head to rest. Spinning, 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 and if I squinted and if I really focused, I could see an image superimposed on the top of what was actually seeing. But it wasn't static anymore. No more lines, no more cracks, no more cobwebs. The image was constantly changing. A window to David's eyes. One I don't think I'll ever be able to close. Goodness, that's a story. These stories are either fairly, like relatively long or extremely long. And I kind of like that. Rather fascinating. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, sadly I do have to work tomorrow in the morning, and I have to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's currently 11:14 p.m. So please do excuse me. As for now, I have to get going, so thank y'all for stopping by. It means the audition what you guys do. And for the... yeah, we'll leave that be. For every author that does hear my stories, and if you are an author and you want me to read some of your stories, if you go to my Reddit page, 20 Eclipse 03, or 20 Eclipse 03, you can find a post that I made. I should be able to pin it soon. About you can submit your stories and also submit your request. So try your best to smile, make the world just a tiny bit better if you can, and till we meet again, I will try my best to record a video for you guys. Hopefully, let's see how that goes. Goodbye.